It's really nice to be here, and I'm so glad that there's no one in the audience that reads the Daily Mail. The Daily Mail don't like me very much, and in fact, the first time they wrote something really nasty about me, my mother phoned me and said, "Well done, darling, now you've really made it as a journalist. If the Daily Mail don't like you, it's a vote of confidence." Right, so cleverly connected, it's an interesting topic, and I started my thinking about this when I was asked to do a TED talk, thinking about the digital work I've done with government, last government and this government, thinking about kids and digital technology. I did the Byron Review in 2008, cleverly named after me, and then in 2010 I did the follow-up review. And I will talk about that a bit, but actually what I really want to talk about is kids and young people, because I think that's where we really are not cleverly connected. And given the fact that they are our future and they are responsible for digging us out of the massive financial global crisis that we've placed ourselves in, I think we could do a much better job connecting with children and young people, and that's really where I want to start. Now, I am a clinician. I work in the health service and also in the independent sector. I work across the board with children and young people, kids who have really difficult lives, kids who come from lives of abuse and neglect, and also children who are presenting with quite a significant increase in a number of psychological disorders, particularly anxiety disorders. Many more children are presenting with anxiety disorders to clinicians like me at younger and younger ages. And the question is, why? Why are we seeing this decline in the mental health of children and young people? What I will say, though, is as I set out the theoretical perspective to you today, and I hopefully give you lots of interesting things to think about, challenge your thinking, and hopefully make you challenge me in mine, because this is what TED's all about. It's worth saying I'm also a mother. My eldest, Lily, is 17. I was very young when I had her. Thank you. And my son Jack is 15. And they think it's beyond hilarious that their mother is a respected academic and clinician when it comes to children, young people, and parenting. Indeed, my son was one of those kids who had really bad temper tantrums. And I do quite a lot of work with kids with behaviour problems. And I remember when he was very little, I was out with a girlfriend. She had her kids, I had my kids. We were in a big shopping centre. And I just started making my first series for the BBC, so some people were recognising me, and we were out, and my son Jack did one of those spread eagle starfish silent screaming tantrums on the floor, and I stood there helplessly, and people walked past looking at the child, looking at the parent, looking at the parent, and looking at the parent, and I just thought, oh my gosh, my career is over, my career is over. And my girlfriend said to me, "Babe, put your head down and walk away, I'll pretend he's mine." And I did. Excellent, excellent. So, good at the theory, in practice, probably as good as the rest of us are, which is we try and be good enough. Anyway, why are we not cleverly connected to children and young people, and where are we getting it wrong? Well, to begin with, you may be interested to know that the UN Committee for the Rights of the Child has censured our media, and we're the only media in the Western world to have the honour of being criticised by the UN Committee for the Rights of the Child. We have been censured for having the most negative media when it comes to children and young people in our country. And if you look at our media, fundamentally all we do is say that kids are rubbish. They're rubbish, they are... we hear about hoodies, we just create a culture where we really do not value young people. And actually it's really interesting, because if you want to go back through history, even Plato allegedly once wrote, what is happening to the youth of today? They are inflamed with wild notions, they riot in the streets, they take no notice of their elders. Well, kind of, that's what I was like when I was a teenager. That's what most of us were like. It's all about challenge. But the problem we have is that we will not accept their challenge, and we are constraining and constraining their lives. Now, I'd like to ask you to think of this. Think of your favourite place to play as a child. Cogs are turning. Got it? I can hear the long-term memories cranking back. If it was outside, if it was outdoors, put your hand up. That's pretty much everybody. Okay, and if it was away from the direct supervision of adults, put your hand up. And if it involved doing things that you kind of knew you shouldn't really be doing, put your hand up. God, you were putting your hand up before I'd even asked you that one. Okay, for those who can't see the audience, I need to explain that pretty much everybody put their hand up to every question I just asked. Now, we now import some children and young people, and I ask them the same set of questions. Would I get the same type of overwhelming positive to all the answers that I asked them? You're allowed to speak. Just so people in the rest of the world know there is an audience here. No, we wouldn't. And the reason we wouldn't is because we are raising kids in a risk-averse culture. Some commentators have written about the fact that we don't see free-range kids anymore. I write about the fact that we are raising children in captivity. And we're raising children in captivity to such a degree that children are learning to be afraid of taking risks. Because everywhere children go, they're told, be careful, you can't do that, you may be in danger, be afraid of life. Now, if we want to connect with children and young people, to empower them to be responsible, global, online and offline citizens, not just because we want them to have great lives, but because they're going to have to look after us because there's not enough money that we've made to look after ourselves, then we are really messing things up. And as children are finding that their outdoor freedoms, their ability to take risks, are being narrowed and narrowed and narrowed, I would say, as an academic in child development, we are denying children the fundamental freedoms that they need in order to connect with life and to develop themselves into the best people they can be. And I think shame on us. So if you look, for example, at the online world, when I was asked to do my review in 2008, it was all about kids and technology and risk and harmful, inappropriate types of experiences. And when the review was first set out, the moral panic was enormous. Oh my gosh, kids and technology, we're all terribly afraid of this. Partly we're afraid because we're stranded on the wrong side of the digital divide. As Mark Prensky said, they are the digital natives, we are the digital immigrants, and lots of adults feel terribly intimidated by children and young people who know something more about something than we do. So a lot of us just do that. But partly the moral panic came from the fact that no one was prepared to do any proportionate and balanced thinking. And actually, if you look back in history, moral panic has been around pretty much forever. Printing press was invented, the church panicked because suddenly the written word wouldn't just be controlled and disseminated by them. Suddenly there was a democratization of the ability to express your thoughts and to print it and to share it with others. In the 1920s, the cinema was going to ruin a society, particularly young people, because they were the ones that wanted to go. In the 1950s, it was comic books spreading communism, particularly amongst young people who were reading these comic books and enjoying them. In the 1980s, it's video gaming, which are turning our children and young people into marauding psychopaths. And now, in our current time, we face the fact that technology and the digital world is making our children into the kinds of people that we don't think they should be. Absolute rubbish. And the truth is, as a species that is in a process of ongoing evolutionary development, of course it's going to be the youngest of our species that are going to latch onto and grab onto new experiences that enrich their environment and want to make them work for them. But interestingly, you look back over history, moral panics mean that all we do is say, no, stop, it's going to ruin things forever. Allegedly, there was a moral panic about the introduction of the sofa. Somehow there was this idea that if the sofas became a piece of furniture in households, that young people would just laze around on them all day and never do any work. Tick, thinking about my household. And something about the domestication of the telephone. Apparently it would stop women, if the telephone was available in households, it would stop women kind of connecting with their domestic chores, and they would just spend all their time on the phone talking meaninglessly to their friends. Tick. Anyway, so sometimes maybe the moral panics are right, but the truth is we are in a state of moral panic. So moral panic obviously causes lack of thought, causes knee-jerk reaction, causes policymakers to worry about the small but significant conservative with a small c minority who do moral outrage all the time. And so what you get then is shut it down, close it off, frisk children who are going to school with mobile phones. Frisk children with a mobile phone. Teach children to use mobile phones productively. And so we go on. Put that alongside our risk-averse culture, which we all accept is around for children. You might be interested to know that there are more accidents and injuries, minor accidents and injuries that children present with at A&E now than ever before. Why? Because they don't know how to fall out of a tree. Why? Because they're not allowed to climb them. So when they do fall out of trees, if they have managed to climb one, they're going to break something because they panic and they stiffen. We used to fall out of trees all the time, those of us my age, and therefore we knew how to fall. So we have children who are vulnerable, and that vulnerability means they have nowhere to communicate, to come together and to take risks. One of the most revolting inventions of recent times I'd just like to share with you is something called the Mosquito. Have you heard of it? Yeah, the Mosquito, it's this device that emits a high frequency noise that can only be heard by people over the age of 20, 21, 22. And it's put in city centres to drive the crowds of young people away. I think that kind of breaches their human rights. I think that's absolutely despicable. And it's interesting, my son and his mates were talking the other day, and one of them was saying that in their school, a load of kids have taped it on their mobile phones. So when they're in a really boring lesson and the teacher's back is turned, they're just kind of beeping each other with the Mosquito, going, yeah, hi, how you doing? Just want to send you a message. Teacher doesn't hear it. Genius children, give them a job. So here we have a system and a society that is designed, we're designing it to constrain children because we want to keep them safe, and the kids are basically just getting on with their life. And where are they doing it? They're doing it online. So in a really kind of perversely ironic way, here we have a situation where we are so afraid of our children in the offline, what's going to happen to them in the offline world. We consume media 24 hours, multi-platform media is coming in to us in all ways, and we think, oh my gosh, the world is more dangerous than ever before. Children are not safe. Keep them like this. So we keep them safe from the offline world, which most of people of our generation know better than the online world. But by keeping them safe and keeping them raised in captivity, they then do their childhood in the online world, in their multimedia emporia bedrooms. Now, that would all be fine because the online world is brilliant, but not so fine when you consider the fact that most kids have unfettered access to the online world. And most adults haven't even had a conversation with them about risk. So, something very simple, like saying, if you wouldn't print it on your t-shirt, a photograph, personal details, anything mean that you might say about someone, if you wouldn't print it on a t-shirt and walk around the public town with it on, don't post it online. Why aren't we telling kids that? Why aren't we telling kids about privacy settings? Why aren't we empowering them and enabling them to be in the online space in a way where they can take risks safely, but also feel if something happens, something really difficult happens for them, they know what to do? And one of the major problems that children and young people are dealing with today, and I see this a lot in my clinics when I get the self-harming, /suicidal kids who come in who have been tormented relentlessly by cyberbullying. Because the one thing we're not doing as we raise our children, as we educate them and as we parent them, is we're not doing it digitally. And what we need to say to kids is this: there are 3 things you need to think about when you're online and you want to be cleverly connected. You need to think about content, what you're looking at, reliability of source, stuff that may be inappropriate for you. You want to think about content. You want to think about contact. Who's getting in contact with you? How can you block people? What do you do if you're worried that somebody who shouldn't be contacting you is contacting you? And finally, conduct. It's very easy to type something really nasty and press a send button because I can't see the face of the person who is going to be devastated by the message that I've sent. So we have a moral panic, so we're not thinking. We have a risk-averse culture where, although we are trying to keep kids safe from this horrible world out there, we're actually pushing them into a global world which is fine, but we've forgotten to talk to them about it. And so what are we seeing? We're seeing kids who I believe are lacking in emotional resilience. Now, what we know about emotional resilience is that EQ, emotional intelligence, accounts for about 75% of the variance when you look at what makes somebody successful. IQ is less important than EQ. But if you look at the education system our children are pushed through, which is driven by targets and testing, with a very narrow emphasis on learning and teaching styles, where technology isn't really being used to enable children to think and learn in a way that motivates and inspires them, one wonders what we're doing in terms of helping our children think, create, learn, and enjoy thinking. Most of the most successful people I know, and arrogantly I include myself in that, didn't do brilliantly at school. But I think what we all have is a self-belief. Something about thinking, I know I can do this and I want to make a difference. And I see so many children these days who are in periods of self-starvation, children who are cutting their arms, children who are literally pulling their hair out in clumps because they are so focused on those grades and on those results and on being the best person. They have no idea how to self-regulate themselves emotionally, how to manage themselves, and how to be. So emotional resilience is where we are not building capacity in our children, and we're seeing that very much in terms of the mental health decline in many children and young people today. I've got so much more to say, but I'm going to be dragged off the stage. So I'm going to end by saying this. If we want children and young people to be cleverly connected, we need to cleverly connect with them. If we want to have a generation coming up that makes us active participants, leading participants in our global digital economy, we have to stop freaking out about how kids use technology and work alongside them to think about how they can do it in ways that are exciting, innovative, yes, risk-taking, but risk-taking in a way that is sensible and is unlikely to cause them harm. Risk-taking is part of child development. The things I have learnt most valuably in my life are when I've failed and when I've taken risks, and the adrenaline has pushed me into something new and exciting and possibly unexpected. Let's be cleverer about how we connect with our children and young people. Let's give them the opportunity to build the emotional resilience that they need to have to face the world that we have created for them. And let's just celebrate youth for the first time in centuries in a way that we've never been able to do before. Thank you very much.